Hello, hello. Welcome to Inspiring Women with ADHD. I'm Renee Allen, the host of this podcast. And it's morning. I don't usually record in the morning. So good morning if it's morning for you. Today, I'm going to talk about internal distractions. So we all have distractions that come our way when we want to do something or when we are doing something. Any time of day, we could have distractions. And managing them, minimizing them is really important if we want to be able to focus, especially if we're challenged with focusing. We have an attention deficit problem. And internal distractions are very interesting to observe because they happen quite a bit. And if you don't notice they're happening, you'll get taken away very quickly from whatever you're doing. If you notice they're happening, then you can see it and you can do something with it and see if you can either act on it or tell it to go away. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But there are a lot of ways that this can happen. One kind of inner distraction, well, a whole category for inner distractions is thoughts or conversations in your head. Because we can have other inner distractions. They all have to do with something within us that could actually be a body signal. And maybe I'll mention those first because those aren't, well, they aren't as hard to recognize that they're happening because our body's talking to us. And it might be easier to recognize those than it is thought patterns, because sometimes we feel like the patterns, the thoughts that we have are just a part of us. We don't even recognize that it's separate from us. Does that make sense? Thoughts often come automatically, almost on autopilot, and they can well up inside of us and just happen without us paying attention to that. But we ride with it. We get on that wave and we just go, and we're kind of spiraling with it. And it may take us somewhere else. It may take us away from what we want to do. When we recognize those thoughts, we can see that they're often just happening on their own, and we can direct them in a different spot. So it's like all of a sudden you realize I'm actually in control here, not just a wave that's taking me off. I can actually pedal this bicycle. I know I'm using so many metaphors, but you actually have control of a bicycle, right? You can turn to the left, you can turn to the right, you can stop, you can pedal forward. When you're surfing, I've only tried surfing once, but when you're surfing, if you actually catch the wave takes you and you're with the wave. You can't really stop that until the wave's done. But with a thought, we can stop the thought. We can change it, even though it's not always easy. Let's go back to the body signals, though, because I think those are a little easier to spot or recognize. So one is discomfort. Let's say you're doing something where you're standing a lot and your feet start to hurt and you think, I can't just stand here anymore. And so it may be hard to focus on what's happening or what you're doing because you're uncomfortable, and you might need to change your body, move your body, do something different without getting distracted from what you're doing. You don't want to take yourself away to where you forget what you're working on, or you see something else and you decide to do that instead. But let's say you're reading a book and you're seated and all of a sudden you're uncomfortable. That's a pretty easy thing to fix if you aren't just on an airplane. It is hard to fix the discomfort when you're on an airplane if you're in a squishy seat. But if you can lay down, lay on your stomach to read the book, or lie on your back and hold the book up, then you can change that level of discomfort in the body pretty easily and not get distracted from actually reading. If you're experiencing pain, you might have to change how you are too. You might need to manage that. Go get an ice pack or whatever you do to manage your pain. Sometimes movement just helps. But pain can interfere with your ability to do what you're doing, to focus on it. And other signals in the body. Maybe your heart's beating a little faster. Maybe you're feeling anxious. Maybe you're having some clenching going on. And clenching, I mean, if you're feeling anger or kind of worry or some kind of stress in your body, a lot of times your shoulders will come in toward your neck, your face will clench. We know what clenching is with our teeth, where our teeth come closer together and the jaw gets closer. And if you start thinking about something, and you may not even realize that's an inner distraction of your mind. But if you're thinking about something, or if you're even doing something that's stressful for you, or you're not confident in it, your body will show you a signal by clenching up like that, by tightening up. And I saw this a lot when I had a job doing editing, and I really enjoyed editing. But I would sit down to my computer to start working on the project, and my heart would start racing, and I'd be kind of tensing up, and I'd think, I need to just stand up. I need to stand up. I need to walk around. I need to go get something to drink. I need to get something to eat. And just that walking around, I realized that was me relieving some anxiety and avoiding what I was doing because it was causing me stress. And I evaluated that. Why is this causing me stress? At first, it was a lack of confidence. So that's an inner distraction. That's a thought in my head, right? It was a lack of confidence of, can I really do what I've agreed to do here and what my boss thinks I can do? So there was a little bit of that. There was also my reservation of criticizing someone else, which is kind of funny because that's what editing is it's showing the person who wrote it some changes that they should make for whatever reason. And I had a problem mentally with that idea of correcting somebody, which is so funny because that's, what editing is supposed to do. It's supposed to make a correction or a suggestion. And I had to get over that. But it took quite a while. It took probably a few weeks of seeing every time I'd sit down, I'd think, oh, stand up, go find something to drink, go find something to eat. And having a little snack kind of took away some of that anxiety. It relaxed me. Maybe it's just the chewing of whatever I was eating, that was calming to me or something. But once I realized the source of that, that helped. And also, if you're feeling any of that in your body, the shoulders coming up, the chest coming in, the heart beating a little faster, breathing a little more slowly, and just manually going in reverse for what's happening. The shoulders are coming up, the face is coming in, just softening in the face, softening in the shoulders, letting go. If your hands are clenching up, letting go. That will help your body get the signal to calm down. It's, taking you out of that fight or flight and into that more relaxing state. And it will help your thoughts too. It's so connected that whether you try to change your thoughts or change the body first, it is connected and it is helpful to just breathe really slowly. And I am very happy to do another podcast just about that because I understand it so well from teaching yoga, but it really is connected to the thoughts and the inner distractions that we get. So those are things that happen in the body besides Mother Nature, as people say, like I have to go to the bathroom. Mother Nature's calling. So that could be a distraction and if you're working on something for a while, that may not be something you can prevent. You will need to get up and use the bathroom and come back. But be mindful as you leave to come right back to what you were doing and try not to have that distract you from returning and continuing, because sometimes it is easy to lose that momentum. And then other things that happen in our bodies are hunger. How long can you go without eating? Probably longer than we think we can. But you may need to have supplied yourself with food before you start working on what you're working on, or have a little snack in your pocket or nearby that isn't distracting because it takes so much effort to eat it, but just to give you a little sustenance, whether it's a drink or food item. And there's probably other body signals I'm not thinking of, itching, things like that, that could distract you. But whatever you can to minimize that or help yourself with that, that will be helpful to being able to focus. Now, the internal ones that are conversations, voices in your head. Those voices come from who knows where. They're obviously in your mind, but some of them come from things that we've always heard and we repeat, or that other people have said and we start to believe, or your own beliefs, your own self-doubt. You might start to do something, and maybe that was part of my editing. Well, maybe I think I said it was actually, can I really do this? Am I going to do a good enough job? If that gets in the way, then you won't be able to focus. Also, mind wandering. Sometimes our mind just goes somewhere else and we just start thinking about something else. And yeah, for sure that happens. And it's not a horrible thing. It's our human mind. The yogi people call it a monkey mind because it jumps around, it hops around, it swings from the trees. And when that happens, you try to just say, come back, come back. And it could be memories, it could be concerns, who knows what. But just noticing that that's happening and trying to reel yourself back in and say, come back, go back on course is helpful. Sometimes feeling trapped by not moving, and that could be staying in one position because you have to, like an airplane or something, the little seatbelt sign hasn't come on, and maybe you just feel like you need to do something else, but you can't. And that need to move or ability to have that movement, especially if you have the hyperactive component of ADHD, can interfere with things. A lot of us who have this have abilities, like right now, my knees are going, they're moving really fast. If my feet weren't on the floor, they are on the floor. But if they weren't, my foot would be flopping back and forth. It does that a lot for whatever reason. And it's probably that energy needing to get out. I look at my grandson, he loves to just move, just walk around, move his hand. And he's been tested to see if that's something, on the autistic spectrum or whatever. But it's a very high form of ADHD, of the hyperactive component, that he has so much energy that he needs to get it out. And he spends a lot of time running around, bouncing, jumping, that sort of thing, constantly moving his whole body, where I'm just moving my knee right now. So sometimes allowing yourself to do that may help, but you might be doing it without it even realizing it. Another is a song in your head. One of my friends who's doing the 5-day focus challenge with us this week said that was one of her distractions yesterday when she was doing the task of the day, was a song that was in her head that just would not leave. And I thought, oh my goodness, yes. I had one time a song that was in my head for about 4 days. And for who knows what reason. It wasn't even a song I'd been listening to recently, but it was the Steve Miller Band, little ditty about Jack and Diane. And, I was seeing everything I did. It was in my head. And I thought, how do I get this out? It's not that I didn't like the song, but it was interfering. And I actually had to sing another song in my head to get rid of it. And the second song didn't get trapped in my head. But I've always heard that you can't, like, if you have a thought in your head, you can't get rid of it. If you sing, you can let go of that thought because you're singing something else. So your brain has to do something else, which if you sing out loud, that makes sense. But even doing it in my head, it worked. So another thought that could come into your head that could be a distraction is indecisiveness or not prioritizing. And this is something that I do often is I'll want to focus on accomplishing something, but I haven't fully committed in my mind that that's the highest priority. And so I'm distracted by all the other things that I think need to get done. And I'm not sure which to do first. But something within me says, no, you need to do this, so just do it. And this can happen a lot when we're trying to focus on something that's not in a workplace, that we don't have a boss or a supervisor that's actually micromanaging or managing us and saying, this is what you need to work on right now. Then that's pretty obvious. That's what you need to work on. But if you're managing yourself, you're managing your own house or your own business, or you have more freedom like that in your job, that may be one of your struggles is this really what I should be doing? Because if I'm doing this, then that's not getting done. And it could even not be a priority conflict. It could just be what you feel like doing. Let's say you are a creative person and you like making bracelets. I started making bead bracelets even before the Eras tour and everyone started doing the friendship bracelets. I was making bead bracelets with my daughter and just on my own, but we started more together. When we get together, we'd buy, a bunch of beads. I'd buy the stones. I like the ones that are, like agate or things like that. And she'd buy things by color and shape, which was fun to see how we made our decisions, how we prioritized. But sometimes I'll feel like doing something creative when something more important, that because being creative, that's not something that I have to get done, but maybe something else I feel like I have to get done. But you feel like doing this instead. And so you do the creative thing and you think, oh, I really should be doing that. Or whatever it is, you might have a hard time making that decision. I do this a lot with exercising because over the years, I've done so many different kinds of workouts. And if I go take a class at the gym, that decision's made for me. I walk in and I'm doing the workout that instructor has designed. But if I'm doing it on my own at the gym or even choosing a workout from, I swear I have 100 workout DVDs. I'll go in there with an idea of what I'm going to do, and I just get paralyzed by by thinking, but I could do this instead. I could do this instead. And I just waste a lot of time and sometimes don't even get a workout done. So yeah, who knows why indecisiveness can take over, but that decision making is one of the executive dysfunctions of the brain that come with ADHD. And maybe you haven't had that struggle before, but it could show up later. I mean, not trying to worry you or anything, but it I don't know, maybe it just depends on the season of our lives or hormonally or what. But things that aren't that big of an issue for you at one point could become a bigger issue later. So just watch for that and try to work with it. And one example, and this might seem like a silly thing to focus on because it's not something you have to focus on for very long. But if you go to a restaurant and you need to place an order, you have a certain amount of time to do that. And the server might come up and say, are you ready yet? Okay, I'll come back. But you have a time limit. And that is a very common problem for me to have that decisiveness. I think I've talked about it here before, but not knowing what I should order, because what if I like this better, and am I hungry for that, and da, 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 da. So making the decisions before you have a time constraint and sticking with it is really helpful, because you don't have the stress of the moment and the time restriction involved while you're making the decision. So in the example of what to order, if there's an online menu, or if you even know what all the choices are and you decide before you walk in, and stick with it, just tell yourself, I got to stick with it, then you won't have as big of a problem making that decision. And obviously you have the freedom to not stick with it, but if that's what helps you, tell yourself to stick with it. Another inner distraction is thinking about what other people might be thinking about you. Do you ever do that? You know, the RSD, rejection sensitivity disorder, does go hand in hand for some people with ADHD. But I would think most people do have thoughts about what other people are thinking about them. So that could be a distraction in what you're doing, especially if what you're doing is in front of other people or could possibly be in front of other people. Even for me making this podcast, if I let that be a part of what I'm doing while I'm doing it, it interferes. It really does interfere. And it may even stop me from doing it because I'm worrying about it too much. And at some point, you have to just let go of what other people might be thinking about you and decide, one, you're probably inaccurate, but even if you are accurate, is that okay? Is it okay to have people think a certain way about you and it being incorrect or negative? And it might just have to be okay. And it's kind of funny because, you know, a lot of people say things like, oh, that's probably not what they're thinking. You just think that's what they're thinking. But sometimes they tell you what they're thinking, and it actually, you know, you guessed it. One of my friends years ago said that her friend Becky said about another friend, I shouldn't say names, but yeah, her friend Becky said, I don't think Cheryl likes me. And my friend said, oh, Cheryl likes everyone. Like, how, I wouldn't worry about that. She likes everyone. And then later, my friend was talking to Cheryl and she said, I don't really like Becky. And so Becky was right. And my friend was really surprised. She thought, I thought like you liked everyone. But did it really matter in the long, you know, in, in the long view of life? You know, you can't make people like you. You can't make people approve of everything you do. And it's just not possible. It's not reality. And yet we do want to not do negative things to people, right? But anyway, just know that that could be what's stopping you from focusing or stopping you from being able to be authentic in what you're doing, especially if it's creative, if it's something that could benefit some. If you're worried about it too much, it could prevent you from ever getting it done. Another big distraction for me that's internal is curiosity. It's the wondering. I did talk about this yesterday in the outer distractions, but just having a question in your mind. And sometimes you might be working on something. You might even be talking to someone. Maybe your focusing is just focusing on the conversation and trying to listen to the other person without your mind wandering. I mean, that's a really good example of all these inner distractions that could happen. You could be talking to somebody, wanting to focus on them, wanting to engage in the conversation and appreciate that person and give your heart and your time to it. And your mind could wander, and then you're missing what they're saying. You could have concerns about something, and go off on some tangent in your mind and no longer be listening. You could have the need to move. And I've had that quite a bit where you're talking to somebody and you think, I really just can't be standing here anymore. I feel like I'm going to fall over. I need to. And maybe sometimes you do say, oh, should we sit down? You might change how you're positioned to be able to talk to them, or you're sitting on a couch, you kind of move into a different way, or, try to stand up, sit back down, whatever. You might also have a priority conflict. Now, this is interesting to think about when you're talking to somebody, because you might wonder, how much more time can I be talking to this person? Or let's say you're visiting with them. I know I'm giving a lot of scenarios, but this happens a lot. So if you're at a party or some kind of event and there's a lot of people there and you're talking with somebody, at some point you might feel like, I really want to be talking to that person too before this party's over. So you're prioritizing in your mind, should I be staying in this conversation much longer? And maybe not. But for however long you are, understand, the need to still pay attention to that person and then exit from that conversation of, well, it's been nice talking to you, and be able to move to the other person. But try not to let that distraction of determining how long you should be there from appreciating that person and being with them. And especially when you may be going from one appointment to another, and it could be with work, you're meeting with one person and then you have the next one, or you need to actually leave and you need time to leave to go visit with the next person. I have this happen often when I go on trips, because a lot of my vacations are spent visiting with people, because that's my priority in life, is being with the people that I love and getting to have time with them. And I started noticing at some point that I might be visiting with somebody on their couch in their living room and loving the time that I'm being with them, and then recognizing, oh, I told my brother-in-law I would be at his house at this time. And then I'm looking at the clock, and then I'm starting to think, oh, well, if I stay here longer, I may be late to him, and you're figuring all that out on your mind. And I've had to really reel that in, to be present while you're here. When it's time to leave, you can leave, but don't let that take you away from this amazing moment, because it can make it so you're not enjoying that person anymore. And it has changed how I set up my trips now, where I have fewer people that I see in a day, so that I don't feel drawn away from them at some point mentally, because I've packed it in too tight. So that could even, change how you schedule your day. There's lots of curiosities that we could have. And one of them is, what time is it? How much time do I have? Da, 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 da. If you need to see a clock while you're doing something, and that will ease your mind to know what time it is, have that clock nearby. Even if you're doing this 5-day challenge with me, which I know some of you are and listening to the podcast today, you're setting a timer to what you're doing to hopefully just keep yourself on task, and also give you a little container for what you're doing, because you'll be able to get that done and not spread it out through the day, or not feel like, oh no, is this going to take forever? It hopefully helps quiet some of those inner distractions, because there's already going to be plenty, right? But one of the women who was doing the challenge this week did say she was distracted by wondering how much more time is left on the timer. And if that's your distraction and it will help you to see it, the timer, have it open on your computer if it's a visible timer, or on your phone. When I teach yoga, I need to see the time throughout my class, because I need to gauge where I am in the class. I usually spend a certain amount of time doing this or that. I have a structure to the different kinds of yoga classes that I teach, and I want to leave a certain amount of time for Shavasana at the end because that's important to me to give them time to just completely let go. So I'm mindful of the clock as I go. At the same time, I don't want to be so distracted that I'm constantly looking at it. So there is some balance there. And with the people in my class, for that kind of experience that they're having and them wanting to focus on themselves and let go of everything else, they enjoy it more. At least I'm saying they, but I think for the most part, the people who've done yoga have said they like it when they don't see the clock because that is a stress in daily life to be mindful of the clock and see what they need to do. And so me teaching them and inviting them in there, they've been able to let go of seeing what time it is because they're trusting me to take them through that experience, and they don't need to worry about what time it is because they know I won't let it go longer than what they need to do. And if you need to set a timer for yourself because the clock stresses you out and you don't want to see what time it is, but you do want to make sure you're done in time, then set a timer or set alarms, which I know a lot of us depend on alarms when we have ADHD because we do forget about, oh yeah, we need to be here, we need to be there. And labeling the alarms is so important. If you have a phone that can label your alarm, and I didn't even know I could until probably a couple months ago. But once I learned that, that helped a lot. It helped so much because sometimes I set alarms for one day and they were on repeat and I don't realize it. And it has a label and I think, oh, that's for something else. And I miss an appointment or something. And so having the correct label that's actually telling you, time to leave for this or time to go put some makeup on and get ready to leave. I have alarms that direct me to that because I might forget that I haven't put my makeup on, which speaking of that, I haven't. I got up and I wanted to make this episode before I go to yoga. I need to leave here in 25 minutes, so I'm doing all right. I just did just look at the time. But if those are things that distract your mind and keep you away from what you need to do, then do something to minimize that or make that not a problem anymore. Can you think of any other thoughts that get in the way of what you are trying to do? It may not even be thoughts. It may just be the inability to relax. Or it may just be the ability to tell yourself, which goes along with relaxing, that I have permission to only do this now, and I'm going to sit with any uncomfortableness that gives me in my body because I feel like I need to be doing something. Maybe what you're focusing on is just giving your body a break and having a conversation with somebody without doing something else. And it seems like we've moved away from phone calls more than, earlier times, decades, years, because we have the ability to text, email, stay in touch in different ways. And that allows for so much flexibility in our schedules because we don't have to actually make an appointment or hope that somebody's available the same time that we are. But I find that it's harder for me to focus on a phone call sometimes because I'm feeling like I can't just be still and listen. And so if you're on a phone call and you get curious about something, because that's a distraction, somebody mentions something and you think, oh yeah, how long ago was that? Yeah, I'll look that up for you. And you're talking about something and you're looking up a detail, but then it's really easy to just bring up a few other websites and maybe think about what you need to order. And we need more glue sticks. That's something I ordered the other day because my granddaughter used the rest of our glue sticks. But if you do things like that, you're not going to be focusing on that person anymore. And a lot of those things that we do, I think, are to calm ourselves from from the usual mode. We're used to going and going and having our brains activated, especially if we're able to get that dopamine hit from bringing up a window or looking at stuff online. That does do something to our brains, but our brains don't always need that. We need to learn to live without that. Getting out in nature, that soothes us in a different way. And so that's often easier for us to let go of those digital things because we have a new thing to seep into our bodies and help us feel good. But sometimes just sitting still is okay too. And we need to learn to be comfortable with that because then it makes it harder to go to sleep at night, harder to focus on things that aren't as engaging. And even just focusing in general. I'm sure you've done this before where you're talking to somebody and then you realize, I don't know where my mind just went and I didn't hear that. And that is one nice thing about getting a voice message, or if you do Marco Polo or something like that, you can swipe back. You can go back and listen again and see what you missed. I do Marco Polo with multiple friends, and there was one friend who told a story, an experience that happened with her daughter. And it was so amazing that I wanted to share it with my husband. And as I started telling him, I realized that there were a lot of disconnected pieces. I knew the overall, but there were a lot of details that to share it, I was missing. So I went back and listened to my friend Becca again. And by the end, I still was missing. I had questions, I had curiosities because I realized there were pieces missing. I think it took me 5 or 6 times of listening to where I actually was hearing everything because it's so easy to have our brains jump around. And I'm not saying you have to do that with everything, but it is kind of a fascinating experiment to do. That if you listen to a podcast, I'll listen to podcast episodes multiple times and I'll find, oh, I didn't hear that before. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that makes more sense. It gives us an opportunity to do that. But you can also do that in conversations. If you find that your focus is off and you are distracted in your mind, it's okay to say, wait, so who are you talking about? And sometimes I hesitate to do that because I feel like I'm going to make them feel bad because I wasn't paying attention. But it's okay to do that. And also, I have bad hearing. I need to do that more often than I do because I don't hear all the words. One of my ears doesn't work very well at all. But yeah, so there are a cajillion inner distractions. I'm sure you could think of many more. But if you're not doing the 5-day challenge with me, even do this on your own or join the challenge for next week. They start every Monday, but sign up before because the first email goes out on Monday and then you won't get in on that set. But if you're trying to focus on something, just take a piece of paper and pen. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, and just write all the distractions that come as you go. And one of the big ones, and I didn't even hit on this, I have talked about it before, and maybe I should do a whole episode about this. But when you have all the things that come up in your mind that you need to get done, that you're worried you're going to forget, that's not just a priority conflict. That's not like, oh, I need to do this right now. Instead, it's more, if I don't text this person right now, I'm going to forget, or I can't believe I forgot that earlier. Because a lot of times when we slow down and actually are focusing on something, we are letting go of a lot of things that are going on. And because we've cleared our minds a little bit, things that we've forgotten that are important will come up, like, oh, I didn't answer that email, or I started doing this but I didn't finish, or oh my goodness, I have an appointment tonight, I would have forgotten. So you want to take care of that because you forgot it before, but you want to make sure you don't forget it again. Or, oh yeah, I need to buy this. Or while you're working on something, you might think of something, I need to order that. Have a piece of paper. It's your do later list. It's not your to-do list right now. It's your do later. It's get it out of your brain. Write it down to do later. And I've done this before just in a notebook where I start to have so many just in 1 hour of focusing on a project that all have multiple categories of things to buy, people to contact, people to text, people to email. It's amazing how many things we have to do that come up that we don't want to forget. And sometimes having that fear of forgetting something gets us distracted enough that we have to act on it. And it is a possibility that you could forget. So writing it down is important. And I've actually made a whole notebook of this, an inner distraction notebook, focus notebook. And I haven't put that on my website. It is part of my 5-day challenge that comes in an email, but I will probably put that on my website as a freebie too that you could find, because it's pretty cool, because it's basically segmented it out that you could print out as many pages of which section of the do later or things that come up on in your mind that you could write them down, and it'll be amazing how many you fill it up with. But I don't know, you probably do, going shopping at stores like TJ Maxx or Ross or even Costco, those stores that aren't dependable, that what you want to buy, what you see today to buy may not be there next time you're there, especially at TJ Maxx. But Costco does it too. There's so many foods that, or even Trader Joe's, that we talk about in our family that we're so sad that they stopped making, it. And it makes you want to buy as many as you can, especially with the food, like, the freezer food or something. You only have so much room, but it makes you, when you're there, and that is part of their marketing strategy, but it's also that some of those places are kind of clearancing things out, or maybe not everybody in the world is buying them and you are, and eventually they realize we got to, stop giving space in this store to this item. But that does factor into, I have to buy it now because I do love this sweater. It may not be here next time. I'll buy it now. I'll decide later. I could take it back. You make that decision because it may not be there later. And that happens with our thoughts, is sometimes we are distracted because what if this thought isn't there later? What if I don't remember it? So writing it down in a place that you'll find it, that's the tricky part if you forget about things, but writing it down is super helpful. And my goodness, this episode was pretty much as long as yesterday's, which I don't mind. I hope you don't mind. But the only thing is this leaves me with like 9 minutes to run downstairs, put on some makeup. I'm already dressed. I already have my water bottle filled up, my bag with the key. I have put my little system into place so that when I need to run out the door, my sunglasses are on a shelf by the door, that hopefully I do it without having to walk back in the house multiple times, or without getting there and realizing I don't have something that I need. But oh my goodness, thanks for letting me come in here today and talk to you, and feel free to be in touch. I do have a contact form on my website, or if you've been in touch through the Focus Challenge, you can always just respond to one of my emails and I will write back. I love to be in touch. Also, I have a Facebook group. It is called Inspiring Women with ADHD. It's a newer group, and I didn't realize that it was hidden, so no one could even search for it. They could only find it if I sent an invitation, and that might be why hardly anybody was in it. And it's gradually growing. But if you want to join that group, it's on Facebook, and it's just called Inspiring Women with ADHD. There are a few questions to hopefully keep out people that don't need to be in there, that we'd rather just have it be us. But I hope you can stay in touch. I'd love to hear from you, see how you're doing on your journey with ADHD, because you inspire me. We inspire each other, and we can help each other with any struggles we have. So thanks so much for being here. Bye. Open windows, broken shadows. Frozen dreams are left for tomorrow. Without a cause, no time for a pause.
mana, bum mana mana mana.
Rewind, I've run out of time to sing melodies and harmonies. I'm cut short, the silence of sound has yet been found, but not by me.